Hello, and welcome back to Legend of the GLORIO Heroes. Neither rain, nor snow, nor the catastrophic implosion of my body will stop us from being the number one Legend of the Galactic Heroes recap podcast on the internet. As always, I'm your host G, somehow here and nominally functional, and with me, also nominally functioning, is my co-host Iro.
Hi, yep, I'm still here. It's been 2 years since season 1 ended. We're 1991 now, I think.
Yeah, it certainly feels like it's been 2 years
Been
since
a
the last
while.
time we've recorded, so... But somehow we're here, and somehow we're ready? Well,
Yeah, as ready as we can be
yeah,
for the
as
second
ready as we
season
will.
of
Yeah,
Legend of the
because...
Galactic Heroes.
Exactly, as always, you could say we've got an interesting trio of episodes. And as Iro alluded to, that's because we're in Season 2, baby!
Woohoo!
Everything has changed, but all your friends are still here, except Kirky Eyes.
He's with us in spirit.
He is. He's watching on from above. But,
turning in his grave.
Yeah, turning in his grave so fast he could power a small country on his own. But we'll get into that later. We might as well just roll right into these episodes. So this week we are going to be talking about 27, 28, and 29.
Yep. 27, The First Battle. 28, Portraits. And 29, One Narrow Thread.
Yes. And let's just go right into it.
Yeah,
so episode 27 kicks off with a new OP.
Yeah, season 2 means we have a new opening and a new ending sequence.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to really miss Skies of Love and Crossing the Bridge of Light.
Yeah. I will miss those. I will miss that ED especially.
Yeah.
But in general, both of those tracks are iconic for a reason.
They're great.
Yeah, they're fantastic. The new one is sorry, go ahead.
So now every episode starts with just an image of some German words about how in every age, in every place, the deeds of men remain the same.
Yeah, that tracks. And then it kicks off with an opening sequence straight out of I think the way you put it,
90s PC Engine game.
Yeah.
Specifically how everyone's faces just pop up and then slide across the screen.
Yes.
In a letterboxed view. That's right out of Rondo of Blood or Tokimeki Memorial or something,
It's very good in its own weird way. And, can't help but comment on how kind of better everybody is animated in that OP to the point where I almost struggle to recognize certain characters because I was like, wait a minute, you've never looked this good in the TV show.
Yeah. Also, I still don't think we can name everyone.
No, in fact, they got a lot of new names now, so I think that game is only going to get harder with every season. But
indeed,
we will persist. But let's talk about the show itself.
Yeah. Episode 27.
Yeah.
Kicks off the recap of season 1. It's been 2 years after all.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, we start off basically going into battle. A training regimen.
Yeah. So we find out that our friend Dusty Attenborough is Admiral now, and while out on a routine training mission, on the outskirts of Iserlohn, as these things are wont to happen, he runs into an Imperial fleet, and they start pounding his ass because he was out there for training. So
yep, they've got all their new pilots like Sergeant Julian Mincy.
Hell yeah,
he's promoted.
Yeah, Julian's
now. He's a pilot.
Yeah, Julian's a pilot.
I'm so happy.
Yeah, he's looking more and more like Luke Skywalker every episode.
Those orange pilot suits are just right out. And we see later some Imperial pilots who are just in the TIE fighter.
Yeah. the Empire and FPA outfits are a look, and I am totally here for it.
Star
So
Wars was very influential.
yeah, surprise, surprise. But yeah, so Julian thrust into the fires of battle, and
Yeah.
he's a little nervous because you know life and death battles and shit.
Yep.
But he luckily
You
he
know.
can think back on the advice of his mentor
Yes.
Yang Wenli.
Yep. And
Eh,
also the advice of his superiors, Konev and Poplin.
yes, those two guys. But yes, we have a great flashback here, or pseudo flashback, where like
Yang's first
basically
appearance in this season is shot from behind.
yes, sitting on his iconic table and giving the fantastic advice of Julian, can you rely on someone who's never died and yet speaks importantly about death?
You know, what a
Which
great. Yep, that's already going on the list of woke Yang lines.
yes, which
It's going right
tells
on
you
there.
that we are already off to a good start here. But meanwhile, we also hear that Reinhard has been up to some business, and
Yeah, causing some major reform
yeah,
across the empire.
apparently he has just magically fixed the entire empire single-handedly.
Guess apparently because he sees the entire treasury of the Liebstad League, like he can just do that or something. Let
Yeah,
me read off the list here: abolishing the nobles' privileges, liberating private lands, establishing democratic constitutions, reforming the tax laws, allowing farmers to start their own credit union, and guaranteeing the freedoms of speech and the press.
yeah, it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of good stuff, and I guess I can't help but wonder. It's in a show that often feels so weighty and grounded in the way that it carries its politics, especially with the FPA. The struggles of the FPA to live to see another day as its own politicians eat itself to death.
Right.
I I can't help but sometimes feel a little. It feels a little uneven, like just how magically and seemingly without consequence or struggle Reinhard can just clean up the system.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think some of that is probably intentional. It's meant to show, like, in a perfect world, right? In a perfect world with a perfect ruler with absolute power, are these the sort of things that would start to happen, right? Like,
Yeah.
if such a thing ever existed, if such a ruler could exist, these are the things that maybe they could start to usher in. But
In fairness to the show, they also immediately have the two political guys, Karl Blake and Eugen Richter,
right,
saying basically they kind of are arguing, or one of them saying, people still aren't it's still an autocratic governance.
right.
The other guy's like, well, yes, but it's clear that significant progress has been made from how things used to be.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm glad that conversation is in the show because
Right.
I think it is important that somebody voices the very real world concern that yes, you have fed and clothed us, you have freed us from our chains, but you still have not actually given us the power to remove your power. And
Right.
if that is never a part of this government, then it can never truly be called a freedom.
Yeah.
Like in a perfect world, in a perfect, in a world where there is true democracy, where the people truly have a say in things, right? Like, it's what we see with the FPA. Then you must give your people the right to destroy themselves, right? It's as depressing as that sounds. It's without that, it can't truly be called,
Yeah.
freedom, so to speak. But
Kind of interesting to jump straight into after the previous episode was Reinhardt's almost broken by the loss of Kirky Eyes, and we see him jump going down that slippery slope of
yeah,
fascism basically.
yeah.
This
Well, that's a thing, right? Like he
and
is.
now in this yeah in this now in this intro to season 2, he seems to be straight back into doing everything perfectly right.
Yeah, or at least he is initially portrayed as such.
Well, yes.
I think the important thing to mention about this episode is that the Reinhard we see in this episode is facade Reinhard. It's almost
Yes.
propaganda film version of Reinhard.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
We're seeing the Reinhard that is like waving to the crowds and kissing babies and like cutting ribbons with oversized scissors. That's the version of Reinhard we see in this episode. Like this episode is mostly
Reinhard
FPA.
von Lohengram the keys to the city today.
Yeah, yeah. It's so we see Reinhard in a more like exposition-esque sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I am glad that those two guys did mention that. I think the thing I need to see now is I need to actually see that in the show itself.
Mm-hmm.
That like actually most people still don't have freedom, or we've only been granted freedom in name only. But
right,
hey, as the other guy said, it is better. We no longer live in the version of the Empire where nobles are getting drunk and deciding, let's nuke our own planets.
Yeah. Woohoo!
But anyways, let's get back to the battle where Dusty Attenborough is trying to put up a fight with his training fleet and, predictably getting his ass beat because, he's entirely stuck with, green recruits.
Indeed. Although enemy Admiral, like, he's really not pushing his luck because what is that Yang Wenli planning? How come they're not putting up much of a fight? He must be planning something.
You gotta love that Yang's sheer reputation continues to strike fear into the heart of every Empire commander.
And this is like Zhuge Liang.
Some
played his liar or whatever.
Some Zhuge Liang, Romance of the Three Kingdoms shit. Just what's he planning? He's not a fool. He wouldn't just sit there and do nothing. He must be fighting badly on purpose. It must be part of his grander plan. And as much as we joke, the problem is that every now and then, the problem is that for these Empire commanders, you can't blame them because every now and then they fight Yang Wenli and they're like, this Yang Wenli guy's not so tough. We're beating him pretty good. And then he reveals that was exactly his plan. He's like, you fool, getting punched in the face repeatedly was exactly my plan.
Now your hand's broken.
Exactly. Like, your hand is broken.
Style. How'd you like it?
Yeah, like you fool, you broke your fist on my face, and now I'm going to kick you to death or something. I don't know. But yeah, so Yang's reputation keeping Dusty in the fight, and we get to see Julian, getting his licks in, getting his swings in this space battle.
And first battle, get some shots in.
Yeah, not just some shots, but fucking damn, Julian fucking takes down a carrier or a whole ship or something, a cruiser. Just like real sly like too. Not even doing like a strafing run on it. He hides in the blind spot of it.
Go away.
Yeah. Waits for the sensor to disappear and then fucking just dumps on the motherfucker point blank. We don't know if like Julian is like I don't think we'll ever expect Julian to be on Yang's strategic level, but he's clearly pretty canny. He knows what he's doing.
You do get a little bit of him like classically. Good old classic, my first kill, let me freak out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's nervous. He's totally nervous. Yeah. And we see that, like, here's a small detail I definitely love about this battle, is that Julian and the other two guys are constantly returning back to the ship to resupply.
That's right.
And you kind of, like, see them return to the cafeteria, and, like, each time there's, like, less and less pilots.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a good image. It's kind of a good bit,
the fighters are not just out doing stuff the entire battle.
Right. Like, battles are big, and battles take a long time. I mean, we'll get to this later, but, like, when Yang's talking about reinforcing them, and they say, how many hours is it going to take?
Right.
Like, like 12 or something?
For, like, 12 hours or something.
Yeah. And it's that reminder that, the version of battles we see in fiction are, the version where things are done by the end of the episode. They're over in 22 minutes. but battles go on for a long ass time, and there are peaks and valleys in the fights, and especially for in modern warfare, mechanized warfare, tanks, planes, all of these things, they got ammo, they got fuel, and they got to go back and get more.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, and so Yang gets the call for reinforcements from Dusty, and we find out that Admiral Merkatz and his buddy are just at Yang's table now.
Yeah, just hanging out there, still wearing their uniforms 2 years later.
Imperial uniforms.
Which is like
later. It's like what? It's been a few months, 2 months.
Wait. What do you mean? Like, I thought it's. I mean, it's been like 2 years since they arrived at Iserlohn, right?
Merkatz?
Yeah, isn't it?
Merkatz who defected from the Empire. It's been a few months.
Didn't they arrive at the end of season 1?
Yeah, and that was like midway through the year, I think. This is now the start of a new year. It's been a couple months.
Oh, it's been a couple months. My bad. I thought it had been like 1-2 years since season 1 chronologically as well. Okay.
No, it's been 2 years since season 1 stopped airing and season 2 began airing.
Right. Okay. For some reason, I thought it was both. For some reason, in my head, I thought it was both that and chronologically in the show because, like freaking Julian being a sergeant, rank pilot in the Space Force. I was like, that's not a thing that happens quickly, right? Like he probably had to go through like basic boot camp and complete his flying certification.
He's been an officer's adjutant for a while.
That doesn't translate to piloting a jet.
It's fine. Nepotism.
I'm just saying. All right. That makes a little bit more sense.
Lessons from Chenkov. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, even then, you still wearing their uniforms 2 months later. You think they'd find some other clothes for those guys to wear, but I guess you want to make sure they stay recognizable to the audience.
Right. But
they have to talk about
his advice of like. So what do you think we should do to send reinforcements? And send like 10,000 ships or something? Overwhelm the enemy force so entirely that they'll retreat without attacking? Is basically his plan.
Yes, yeah, that's the gist of it. To better elaborate, essentially, what Merkatz is talking about is one of the fundamental military theories about how reinforcement should work in the battlefield. And the idea is essentially it's the concept of immediately available manpower. It's soft manpower versus hard manpower, essentially. The idea being you can have 10,000 guys in a fight, but if you only ever have 2,000, 3,000 out on the field at a time, then that's actually your effective fighting strength. We see this theory in play all the way back in the very beginning of season 1. That's the exact military theory that Reinhard uses to defeat the FPA so soundly. Is that even if they,
right, even though they outnumber
him,
yeah,
if you're only ever fighting a fraction of their forces at any given time, and every time they reinforce, it's too small and too too weak and too slow of a reinforcement, then it's, if you're killing 3,000 ships and you whittle them down to 1,000 and then 2,000 more ships show up, you're basically still fighting 3,000 ships, even if you actually had 5,000 ships to begin with. And I kind of appreciate this bit here because I feel like most fiction don't really ever think about this kind of thing. Like, I feel like in most fiction, it's just, the riders of Rohan are here.
Yeah.
Like,
now we win.
Here and they win. When realistically, like, the riders of
Rohan would have to be a large number.
Yeah. But it's not only that, but it's both times we've seen reinforcements here used in the fiction. It's been the overwhelming force idea, which is we slow down, we wait until everybody's ready to go, and then we go at once. Which in this episode does work out. It barely works out for the FPA, and in many ways it only works out because the Empire commander is, wigged out enough by Yang's reputation that he doesn't pursue. But the other end of the spectrum of reinforcement theory is is the speed of reinforcement. Essentially, okay, fine, you're right. We should wait until all 10,000 are ready. But what if
If
they
we
don't
take too
have that
long,
time?
our buddies will just die.
Yeah. Like, what if they don't have 6 hours to wait? What if they only have 3 hours? What can we send? And will what we can send in half that time still be enough to turn the tide of the battle? And these are the really difficult questions leaders have to ask themselves in battle. And I think that's why I love. It's one of the things I really love about Legend of the Galactic Heroes is kind of examining. Okay, what are these decisions and why do we make them? Because anybody who's like taken like history in high school or college, you read about battles, you read about how they're lost, whether it's any famous battle, Sekigahara or Waterloo or Normandy. You always ask, like, reading from the history books, why didn't the generals just do this? It's so obvious in hindsight. But
in hindsight, not
right.
not in the moment.
But yeah, at that moment, like, and you know what? And I feel like this works well because I apologize for rambling so long about this, but I'm about to tie this back into the plot. This is really hard. This is a really hard decision for any commander to make.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, now remember that this commander is now Yang Wenli, and Julian is in that battle.
Yes, his son.
His son, his precious son. and now Yang still has to make the choice of, well, we're going to wait. Like, I just have to trust that Dusty and Julian will hold out long enough to be rescued. Like, that's like psychology, man. Like, the mental fortitude.
Yang
like,
can keep it together when he needs to.
He can, and that's his greatest trait. Like,
but also,
I feel like
I don't know if he would have. Based on stuff that comes later, like, I don't know if he would have done that if Merkatz hadn't suggested it first. Which not to say that he wasn't thinking of, not to say that he wasn't going to do that anyway, but we'll get to it later.
Yes. But anyways, so the gambit, luckily it plays out for everybody. We get this kind of great moment, I just want to mention real quick, where Julian is on his ship and it is like dying, all systems down, all systems failing.
The ship
like,
he's refueling at is being blown up.
Right. And this fucking grizzly old mechanic dude's like, I gave you enough fuel and ammo to get out of here, kid.
You got 20%.
Survive. Right. Just
you
fucking.
Must live on.
Yeah, and then fucking Julian fucking blasts off, and then right behind him, it's. Oh my god, that's that good like space opera shit that I love,
Totally.
It's that shit that happens in Gundam sometimes too, where like, the Gundam docks at the ship and they're like, all right, get him like some beam ammo or some shit. It's like, damn, we don't even have enough to resupply him. He's just oh shit, the Xiang's here. Just get out of here, hurry, quick. So good. But yeah, so the Yang fleet arrives just barely in time to swing hard and
scare off the Empire, basically.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And the episode kind of finally ends with everybody kind of coming back together. You gotta have this, a lot of good scenes with Yang here, where Yang's kind of like sitting on his table,
Yang.
And then he's just like.
Everyone's like, oh, I hear Julian did really well and shot down 3 guys on a cruiser.
Yeah.
And Yang was just like, he used up all his luck, and now he needs to be even extra careful. And
yeah,
now is the true test. And
you have Yang being like a very good pessimist, but still genuinely loving dad here, where. It's like,
that he's saying this because he was worried about Julian.
Of course, yes. He's saying this all because he's worried, but also because that's just kind of who Yang is. Like, Yang is obviously absolutely, like, because there's a scene even before that, right, where like Yang's just kind of like sitting at the table, like staring off into space, and like Frederica's like giving him the report, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, and Julian.
Yeah.
And she's like, he's safe and sound, and you could kind of just feel the tension, like leave his breath, and it's there's a bittersweetness to this episode, of course. Like, we're happy for Julian, right? He's kicking ass, he's taking names, but also, like, this is the life that Yang, like,
That's the last day of innocence. You're right.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, it's the last possible thing that Yang wanted for Julian in a ways. But, you know,
we get this goofy ending to the episode where
yeah.
Julian's like, "I'm back now, Admiral." Young says, "I told you to be careful, not go out and
Be a damn hero.
be part of a battle." And then we just get the good old everyone laughs ending.
Yeah, it's so good.
Goofy shots of
Just-
like Ben Pop, like smiling and nodding, and
right. Like it's
Ron,
literally
like, shaking his head, and slimy ass Bogdashu giving a thumbs up.
yes. It's literally like the end of a sitcom, where everybody's just like ha ha ha, and everybody's like clapping Yang on the back and smiling to the camera. And yes, as
and Schneider in their Empire uniform,
right, kind of like smiling in the background. And yes, as you said, like probably the best part of all is Bogdashu just like, fucking like winking and pointing finger guns at the screen, like.
It's such a dumb image. It's great.
It's so good. It's fantastic. It's it's this kind of episode that it's a great first episode to bring back the season.
Yeah, definitely.
It brings back the important stuff we need to know. It brings us back up to speed on what has changed and what has stayed the same. What is the new status quo. But then it also gives us, enough fun, exciting morsels to work with, and is generally pretty upbeat as far as episodes of this show in general go. So, definitely, it's definitely the kind of episode that's like, Legend of the Galactic Heroes is back and better than ever. But I can appreciate it,
Yeah, definitely. It was a lot of fun, just like getting back into that after the big like drama bomb of the end of season 1 and doing the podcast about that, and not really being sure what was coming up, and then just seeing that episode and going, "Oh, yep, we're right back into it." Legend of Galactic Heroes.
Yeah. No, it's good to be back, And
indeed,
we kind of needed this kind of more uplifting episode to keep our spirits high for the remaining 2 episodes of this trio.
Yeah, it's episode 28, Portraits.
Mm-hmm.
Portraits specifically of the Empire Admirals, it seems.
Yeah, so what Iro is talking about is that we start off with Reinhard getting some he's pardoning some guys for whatevers, and he's getting some gifts, getting offered paintings.
Admiral Oppenheimer is all, "I brought you this beautiful, amazing painting from the famous artist." And Reinhard just says, "Mecklinger will know where to put this. Also, I'm arresting you for bribery."
Yeah, Reinhard does not like these paintings.
Oh, Mecklinger probably appreciates art.
Yeah, probably that perv.
Yep. And what, like, Reinhard's got 2 different adjutants in this episode, I think?
Yes. So we are treated to the revolving door of Reinhard's adjutants as he gets increasingly irritated that literally nobody in the entire galaxy can replace Kirky Eyes.
Yeah. He's like, after arresting Oppenheimer for this painting business, he's just like, "Oh, why didn't you vet my interview? It was better. My adjutants are incompetent." And yeah, just, we all miss Kirky Eyes, I suppose.
Indeed we do. But anyways, let's move on to people who are still alive and still relevant to this show.
Indeed.
So, we get a little bit of a Mittermeyer backstory
Yeah,
this episode.
Mittermeyer and Reuenthal.
Yeah, but we
The
start
twin
off with
stars.
we start off with Mittermeyer, and we find out that when he was just a lad, I guess his family adopted some the daughter of a family friend or something.
It's a
You know,
distant relative of his mother or something like that.
yeah, a girl named
Evangeline.
yes, Evangeline, and
Like, picture perfect, blonde hair, blue eyed.
yes,
Perfect
and we can't.
pure lady.
Yes,
She did. A picture of her showed up in the My Client Cusses the Sea of Stars movie towards the end,
yes, she did.
and when we watched that, I was like, oh, this person's writing a letter to this girl.
Yeah,
I'm sure this is important later.
right. It's one of those little details that having know nothing of the series at the time, you watch that movie and you're like, all right, that's like a good
Sure, that's a call forward.
it's a good narrative shorthand to communicate. Oh, this character has
Right.
people that he cares for, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Except just because of her looks, I thought it was that I couldn't tell it was Mittermeyer at the time. But just because of her looks, I thought it was this person's daughter or something.
Yeah, I initially assumed it was a sister or a closer relative, because I said during this episode, I was like, is this girl gonna call Mittermeyer Oni-chan by the end of this episode?
Well,
turns out the relationship is close of a different variety.
Yeah, Mittermeyer is a married man.
Yeah, so we kind of watch Mittermeyer grow up, join the military academy, and eventually, and but before that, we see that we see how Mittermeyer decided, you know what, I love Evangeline. And we kind of see that Mittermeyer is kind of this kind of fun goof. He's in a ways, he's kind of like Shenkop if Shenkop were way less suave, but still roughly as well-meaning.
Just barges into a flower shop.
Right, he's just
like, give me all the flowers.
But wait, maybe not all of them. That would seem ostentatious.
No, yeah, actually, half. Also, what flowers should I get? I guess.
Help me out.
And everyone's just laughing at it.
It's very good. You can tell that Mittermeyer is a dude, again, clearly a guy with a lot of love in his heart. Maybe doesn't always know exactly how to express it, and maybe doesn't think things through before he does, but he clearly means well. Mm-hmm. He's a fun goof, a fun dude to hang around.
Yeah.
In many ways, Mittermeyer is that dude that you really want to hang out with. He's so fun to hang out with. He's so sociable. He's so likable that you go get drinks with him, even when you know that at the bar he's going to be there with his friend, his good buddy Reuenthal.
Who the segue between Mittermeyer's backstory and Reuenthal's backstory is Reuenthal showing up at Mittermeyer's wedding and kissing his bride. Kissing the hand of Evangeline.
Oh yes.
At the wedding.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, "Is that okay?"
Well, it's not as dangerous, or it's certainly not going in that direction of implications as we fear.
No,
it's more.
Of course,
it turns out
nice enough. It's just that Reuenthal's kind of a dirtbag.
It turns out Reuenthal is kind of a dick, and not even
hilarious.
A good one. We find out that Reuenthal has some serious hang-ups about women, or will allow him to explain in his own words. I paraphrase here: the creature called woman was given life just to betray men.
It's so much.
And we find out that Reuenthal, he's more of a pump and dump type. He goes through the ladies, like tissue paper, and throws them out exactly like tissue paper. He's in many ways Reuenthal is perhaps he is like the dark enlightenment self-insert character.
The pickup artist.
Yes, the pickup
Heroes.
Exactly. all those fucking creepy ass pickup artist subreddits, probably looking up to guys like Reuenthal, be like, Reuenthal's an alpha male. He gets it right. Reuenthal understands the true value of a woman. You're meant to enjoy them for their body, but they provide no meaningful emotional companionship.
We get his comically dramatic backstory.
Yes. We find out that Reuenthal hates women because of
he's a bastard child, or
yes.
His mother just married married his father for his money.
Yeah, basically the story is that Reuenthal's dad is like a middle lower class merchant, but makes a ton of money, new money type, basically.
Yes.
And then gets approached by an old family that's
gold digger.
Yeah. And the loving relationship that clearly comes from that.
Yes. And apparently the reason Reuenthal has heterochromia is that he has the eye color of his mother and of her lover, not his father.
Because, that's how heterochromia works.
Yep. And so her mother, as this is revealed, it also says that his mother killed herself.
Yes.
And his father turned to drink and constantly told him, "I wish you'd never been born."
Again, it's...
comically overwrought.
It's so over the top. It's impossible to take seriously. Like, again, if I did not know better, I would almost assume this is Legend of the Galactic Heroes doing this as a comical bit.
Right.
Like, it's so funny. It's so absurd.
Hilarious.
It's impossible to take seriously.
But like half the stuff on the Empire side, this is kind of overwrought space.
Right. There's always been this kind of like weird reality disconnect whenever we go to the Empire side of things. Like, every time we watch an FPA episode, it's like, oh yes, right, democracy is fucked, everything is falling apart, these very real issues that for some tragic reason continue to reverberate 20 years later. But then we watch the Empire episodes, and it's like
you're watching like Victorian,
right? It's like the crazy countess wants to kill Reinhard's sister. The Phantom of the Opera is here to kidnap you.
The former consort is causing making waves among the noble court.
Yeah, it's freaking the bastard child of a noble family. It's so absurd.
Oh, but so fun.
But yes, so fun. But I guess we're kind of given this backstory because, for better or worse, I'm sure Legend of the Galactic Heroes has now realized, oh shit, without Kirky Eyes, there's not a whole ton of likable characters left on the Empire side. Like,
yeah,
I think as we all spoke of in our prior season finale podcast, we are all deeply interested in Reinhard. Like, Reinhard is without a doubt one of the most interesting characters we've maybe ever seen in fiction, but he's not likable. He's not sympathetic.
Right.
Certainly not anymore.
Yeah, and so by showing us Mittermeyer's like cute, adorable awkwardness, and that he loves his wife, we kind of have that like fun contrasting, like he's best friends with maybe like if not for Oberstein, the actual biggest asshole in Reinhardt's cabinet. But again, like, it creates a fun odd couple type of thing.
Totally. Like, they were already those two guys before this flashback episode, and this kind of just solidifies that for us. It very much is totally that social dynamic of, like, the way I kind of headcanon it is like, everybody wants to hang out with Mittermeyer, right? Because Mittermeyer, he's the star quarterback. He's a little goofy, but he's not a dick about it. Like, he's the star quarterback, but you also know that like he would like probably hang out with like the nerds too.
Yes.
Like, he's like that dude. He'd probably get along with them as well. But the thing is that like Mittermeyer's too nice, which means he's even friends with guys like Reuenthal. Even as Reuenthal says shit like, like, I hope you're happy with your wife, but she's a woman. And don't ever forget that marriage is a sham, and that women only exist to physically pleasure men. And Mittermeyer is like that dude who just takes a sip from his beer and slaps Reuenthal on the back. Reuenthal, you joker! That's a good one. And at the table is probably like Fahrenheit and Bittenfield and like Mecklinger all kind of like chuckling nervously.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so, Mittermeyer, tell us something cool that happened to you recently.
Well, I just talked with Admiral Hilmer von Schaft and his giant mustache.
Yes. Turns out we meet Admiral Schaft, who is also kind of a couple of his own kind between him and his absurdly luxurious mustache.
This dude walked right out of like a Fire Emblem game.
I know, right? Like, this dude is totally
he would
like
be a Chapter 4 mid-boss, or he just has a big axe, or whatever.
Yes. Like, he is literally like every fucking like Chapter 4 Fire Emblem like knight mid-boss.
He's got an axe. Let me teach you about the weapon try.
Right. He'll be a knight. He'll have like an axe and a throwing axe. So like teaching you about ranges, and he'll also be like the one sitting on like the fort door. So like you can like continuously like pelt at him and like not take down all of his HP and grind your support conversations.
Indeed.
But yeah, Schaft is here because he has.
He's like head of science technology or something.
Yes, and as the Empire's foremost scientist, he has an ingenious plan to defeat the FPA. And his plan,
These are Lone Fortress. We'll move our own fortress in front of it.
Yes, essentially, we find out that Schaft co-wrote this plan with one P. Starfish. Because this plan is essentially straight out of that one fucking episode of SpongeBob SquarePants where essentially Schaft is like, why don't we just move our fortress from over here to right next to Iserlohn? And Reinhard...
We'll just strap a bunch of engines to Geiersburg and fly over there.
Yeah, and Reinhard, being the omniscient, the omniscient benevolent God King he is, kind of just slowly nods and goes,
Sure.
Yes,
like
that'll work.
Plan.
Like, here's the thing. That's the thing that actually worries me the most about this plan. Like, if Reinhard looked at this plan and was like, you're a fucking fool, but go for it anyways, I'd be like, oh boy, this is going to be fun to watch. But because Reinhard's like, actually, no. I think this plan's a great idea. I'm like, oh shit, are they actually gonna pull this off? Some fucking real Looney Tunes ass science.
And when Reinhard puts Admiral Kempf, Gustav Kempf,
yes,
and Neidhart Muller,
yes,
in charge.
Yes,
and apparently at Oberstein's suggestion.
Yes. Oberstein recommended these men for the job. A minor side note: Kempf was the admiral from the previous battle, the one who wigged out at the thought of Yang.
I forgot about that actually.
Going ape shit on him. We don't get a Mittermeyer or Reuenthal tier backstory about him. Essentially, they just say Kempf, age 36. He is a stern but righteous man.
Yeah.
Or something, which
when Mueller's like, he's young and inexperienced, but highly diligent,
yes,
or something like that.
I mean, essentially, these two dudes get described as if they were also Fire Emblem mid-bosses. Like,
yes.
I am pretty sure a stern but righteous man has probably been used to describe a Fire Emblem mid-boss one time or another in that series history.
Yeah.
But
we basically get told Oberstein recommend these two because he doesn't want Mittermeyer and Reuenthal to become too distinguished.
Yeah.
Because they're already, after Kirkya's passed, they're already basically the number two.
Yeah, I mean, we even kind of talked about this in the season finale podcast, where Mittermeyer and Reuenthal are kind of the ones who pick up the pieces right after Kirkya gets killed. They're the ones who get the Admirals together. Right. They're the ones who are kind of like, all right, dudes, what do we do about this shit? So they're kind of already positioned, to become that for Reinhard. So that is actually the aspect that does make me wonder if this plan will actually work or not. Because, I mean, obviously Oberstein, it's better for Oberstein generally if the Empire succeeds. But now I'm kind of curious, like, they're not being pulled very strongly at this point, and I wonder if that's because they're saving these plot threads for, much, much later in this show. But this kind of idea of Oberstein and Reinhard and even the other admirals all kind of pulling their own, political strings, to further their own, like, yes, we are all aligned in roughly the same direction. We want to take over the FPA. We want to make Reinhard happy. But how we get there and how that affects us individually,
potentially very different.
Yes, I think that Reinhard's cabinet very much do not see eye to eye on that yet. And we kind of get a little bit of a conversation about that, where some of the aforementioned admirals I mentioned, Reuenthal and Mittermeyer and Bittenfield and, was it Fahrenheit?
No,
it was the other one with gray hair.
I don't know his name.
Oh my god, every fucking time with that guy. We'd have to open up our old notes, but let's not do that in the middle of a podcast. So they're kind of having a conversation about this all, and then, I think it's one of them, the one I can't remember his name of, he brings up the
Oberstein picked up a stray dog, stray Dalmatian,
and it turns out
he goes to buy a food in the middle of the night.
Because turns out Oberstein's one redeeming trait is he loves dogs.
Yep.
Who else?
Such a nice guy.
Who else loved dogs? Hitler loved dogs. So you know what? Think about that for a while before you go exonerating Oberstein of all prior actions just because he takes care of a cute dog.
We have this great line from Bittenfield.
We're fucking Bittenfield. Turns out,
even though Oberstein is hated by everyone, he's loved by a dog. I guess they hit it off because they're both dogs.
Yeah.
They just downed the champagne.
Fucking, I was literally out loud. I was like, damn, Bittenfield. Fucking spitting hot fire.
Right.
Maybe I might have to change Bittenfield's nickname from Bittenfield rhymes with Garfield to fucking Bittenfield, fucking king of the disc game. Because he's again.
Going for it.
Yeah, again, we don't know, his acumen as an actual tactician in the field of battle leaves a little to be, desired, but
he's talking shit about Oberstein.
Yes, and he's talking pretty good shit on Oberstein, too, so, I can't help but respect it, game, respect game.
Indeed.
And this episode finally ends with a conversation between, Reinhard and, what was it? Shit, I feel terrible. Hilda, yes, Hilda. Basically, they're kind of talking. I think by this point, Reinhard has switched to a new adjutant.
Yes, I believe so.
Yes, and they're discussing plans.
Yeah, and Hilda's basically saying, moving Geiersburg is a bad idea. There's no profit in it for us to chase this plan and send our troops after this.
Right. She's basically saying that we're at peace. Things are better than ever. She's
still recovering from all the Leapstat stuff.
Yeah. And it's not even a case of, she's anti-war or anything. It's just be practical about this. We just fought a war. We just fought a civil war. The people need time to recover. We need time for our troops to recover. And Reinhard kind of gives some real faulty logic here of I will bend to nobody. Nobody tells me what to do.
Power.
I'm Reinhard.
It's me. I'm Reinhard von Schaft.
And you know what? I think perhaps we'll maybe we'll look back on this moment, but I have a bit of speculation here that we might be beginning to see the beginning of a new character quirk for Reinhard, and I think that is I think he's going to become something of a blood knight. I think I think we might find out that Reinhard kind of needs to sustain his soul on conquest.
Right.
Like Reinhard, of course, like Reinhard wants to be the God Emperor. He wants to be the God Emperor that is beloved by his people. That he makes his people happy. But I think Reinhard is also like deep down he gets bored by making people happy through the boring ways. I
The
think he
only way
wants to
to
be
fill that thirst in his heart is through battle.
right. I think he wants to be a conquering king. And I think right, like when he speaks that thirst in his heart, that now that Kirkiais is gone, will Yang Wenli be able to sate it? Like, kind of think about it, right? Like, you don't have to go after Iserlohn. I mean, I guess you kind of do. It's the primary bulwark now, but
Yeah.
I
Well,
think that if you're a
yeah.
guy like, I think it's more that if you're a guy like Reinhard, there are probably a million other ways to screw over the FPA. Like it's
Yeah.
not like they need much help with it. But I think Reinhardt is specifically okaying this plan because it's going to take him to Iserlohn and it's going to take him to Yang Wenli. And I think that's what he's actually like. He won't admit it to anybody. He might not even admit it to himself, but I think he's itching for a fight that he doesn't even necessarily need to fight. Not yet, anyways, because deep down, it's kind of all he knows how to do.
It's all he's like. Yeah. What else is he gonna do if not go do this? He's like just spin his wheels for a while.
Right. I mean, it's for better or worse. It's the thing of what do we always hear about Yang? Yang, when this war is over, Yang wants to go back to his history books. He wants to be a researcher, a historian, an academic.
He wants to not have this war. Like,
right, but it's not even that. It's not even about winning the war. It's more about creating peace so that he can go do other things.
Yeah,
and I think that's actually
Reinhardt's end game in this.
Right. Like Reinhardt doesn't have an end game. Reinhardt doesn't have hobbies. Like think about it. Like Reinhardt's hobby is war. It's battle.
Yep. He was 10 years old. Like that's all he knows.
He doesn't have anything else. He doesn't have a hobby. He doesn't crochet or go horseback riding or whatever it is shitty nobles do. Like, fighting is all he knows. And I wonder.
Doesn't even want to go to parties.
Yeah, he hates parties. He especially hates parties that are thrown by that dumb fathead Braunschweig. But yeah, I guess. Look, this could just next season finale when season 2 finale ends with Reinhard like putting down his sword and proudly declaring he will never fight a war ever again and abstaining from the throne. And the newly introduced character actually becomes the new primary character of the Empire. I will happily eat crow and be like, wow, I guess I really did not see that coming. But I think that maybe his talk here with Hilda is like him verbally justifying maybe a pathological need that will only grow stronger as this show continues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess at the very end, related to all that, is it this episode or the next episode where Hilda goes to
that's next episode.
I think that's next episode. My bad. Okay, so in that case, that's it for episode 28.
Yeah,
let's move on to episode 29.
We haven't mentioned what Phezzan's been up to the past couple episodes.
Yes, but they have been they've been Phezaning it up. Rest assured.
Oh yeah, like
they've been
straight up got agents in both sides, and
yep.
But this episode opens with a dude from the Earth Cult.
Oh my god, this is maybe the best. The Earth Cult is just a gift that keeps on giving in terms of like visual gags.
Like there's a bunch of people in the waiting room waiting for their meetings with the Landesher of Phezzan, Adrian Rubinsky, and then this man in a pitch black robe and a mysterious necklace just sits down in the meeting room. And everyone's just like, what? What's with this guy? Why is there a weird priest here? but also he gets to go to the front of the line.
It's so good because it's not even a case of like in some fiction or in some media where the cultists wear normal clothes in their day to day, right? But
No,
then
he's still
but
wearing
then
his
but then
goofy
when they
robes.
he's going in there in the robes, like what a power move. Like goddamn, the Earth cult must have way more influence than we previously assumed. If they're fucking, Emperor Palpatine ass fucking priests can just walk walk
Yeah.
into whatever building they wish and incur no consequence whatsoever. But
Yep.
anyway, so
So
we
yeah, Bishop Degsby just
yes.
meets with Adrian Rubinsky
Yeah,
to
yeah,
basically
a
check
bishop of
in
the
on
Earth
him.
cult. Yeah.
Be like, hey, you're still furthering our interest, aren't you? Don't forget
Right.
who put you in charge, Rubinsky. It was
Right.
us, the Earth cult.
It's very good, yes. We they talk of the things that Phezzan tend to talk of, which is mainly, fucking over the Empire and the FPA
Right.
and
Well, although
profiting off of it.
nowadays, Fazan's plan now is that
Yeah,
the
Phezzan's got new
Empire,
plans.
the Empire made it out of the double coup, way better than the FPA. So
Yes.
now their plan is basically to back the Empire and allow the Empire to fully consolidate the galaxy under themselves,
Yes.
and then maybe kill Reinhardt, and
Right.
then Fazan will have control over
Right.
all of
So
the
the
galaxy.
thing that we want to state here is what Iro you just talked about is actually that this is specifically what is on paper Fazan's plan.
Right.
Don's
On
plan
paper.
is that the FPA is too weak to keep propping up. We might as well just kill them. Then, if we're lucky, we as Fazan will basically, with them out of the power, we will naturally fill that vacuum. And then once we, take care of that, foolish boy emperor that we clearly will have no trouble at all dealing with,
Yep.
then Fazan will control everything. But this is Fazan's plan. This is not Adrian Rubinsky's plan. And I
Yeah.
think this is kind of where for me Fazan gets really interesting. Again, not necessarily.
Rubinsky's gone up a few slots in my character ranking from this episode.
Yeah, Rubinsky fucking dropping some lines, some almost Yang tier lines in this episode about like, how zealotry, almost killed the world once, and how, religious
Right.
dogma is like, the quickest way to, to torpedo your own, your own plot.
After the bishop leaves, like saying, don't forget who put you in power, Rubinsky. Like
Yeah,
starts talking, and like, oh man, just pouring himself a drink. These fanatics are real hard to deal with.
yeah,
They've got no enjoyment in their lives.
Yeah, there's definitely an aspect of Rubinsky that I'm kind of glad. I'm actually really glad we're getting this now because
Right.
Phezzan,
So far he's just been like, ha 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 ha. The FPI and the Empire will tire themselves out, and soon Fazan will rise to power.
Right,
we just need to manage them.
Yeah, I mean, I think even more to its core, the problem with Phezzan was that Phezzan was just, they were literally
they had no motives or anything.
Right, no, they were literally, just as Keikaku, the faction. It's just every episode where Phezzan shows up is just Rubinsky being like, just as planned. So, what did you plan? What do you mean just as planned? What plan? You and you'd be like, and they wouldn't elaborate. It would just be like, the plan's coming together.
I love it when a plan comes together.
You just gotta have faith. You just gotta trust the plan. And now we're finally seeing some of Rubinsky's own personal ambition.
He basically like the Earth cult's plan is basically like take down everyone, and then the Earth cults will be masters of all. But Rubinsky's like, that's not good because if we there's so much reform going on, and if we take down everything, there's just going to be chaos, and it's going to take tons of time, tons of effort, tons of resources just to contain the
Yeah.
chaos that will result.
The thing that Rubinsky I think understands is that some chaos is good, but too much chaos is unprofitable. Essentially, you need to stir the pot just enough that
Mhm.
people are coming to you for your support and your influence. But if you tip the pot over, like
Now you just made a mess.
now you've just made a mess essentially, and basically that's what the Earth Cult's trying to do. They're trying to
Yep.
tip the pot over. Whereas I think Rubinsky has a more canny understanding of the actual stakes at play here. He gets that
Yeah.
actually no, you idiots. Like if we kill the FPA, then
If we allow these like fanatical doctrinists to go in charge, it's not going to be good.
yeah.
There's a great line here where he says, "Remember the Crusades? There was a time where Christians suppressed and mercilessly killed people of other religions. I won't let such hideous barbarism be repeated."
Yeah.
And I lost.
Yeah, Rubinsky is, again, I'm not going to say I sympathize or root for Rubinsky, but
No.
definitely a much more interesting character now. But we'll return to Rubinsky perhaps later in the episode, but instead we kind of switch gears to Julian, who has now been, for his actions at that battle, has been promoted to Master Sergeant.
All right, but of course we meet him as he's cooking a big pot of soup or something.
Yes,
and
we have
playing with the Roomba.
Yeah, and we have this fantastic flashback where Julian reminisces on how he met his venerated mentor for the first time, and we get this great flashback of fucking the door opening to just adorable baby Julian, freaking 8 years old, 12 years old, fucking whatever.
Yeah.
And he's just
hey,
like,
are you Yang Wenli?
And we cut to fucking Yang Wenli, toothbrush in mouth, fucking
in his pajamas, like bleary eyed.
No clue what is going on.
I come in, I guess.
And
there's also a good bit here, Julian's been promoted, and Frederica calls him up to tell him he's been promoted. He goes to salute and realizes he's holding his ladle in his saluting hand, and has to switch his hand.
It's very good. It's those little like Tomino-esque animated moments, where like characters do things that like feel realistic, like they make mistakes in the way real people do, instead of just like being animated perfectly to carry out the action. But yeah, so unfortunately, we kind of move on next to Henslow, the FPA liaison on Phezzan. Right. And he's sweating bullets because the FPA is in debt.
Goofy, like Japanese salaryman stereotype.
Yeah, this motherfucker.
I must constantly be hiding my sweat because I'm stressed out.
Right. Again, let me remind you that this person, Mr. Henslow, Japanese salaryman wiping his sweat because he's nervous about his meeting with Phezzan because his country owes way too much debt, exists in the same setting as the man who has heterochromia because his mother cheated on...
His mother, the countess.
Yes, his countess cheated on her husband and then killed herself in shame. And that is why Reuenthal hates women and has different colored eyes. Again, these people exist in the same galaxy.
Oh, it's so good.
It is so good. It's fantastic.
But yeah, FPA is in a lot of debt, basically, and Phezzan's basically saying you're not good for the money unless you're a true, proper democracy, or something along these lines.
Essentially,
you need to have political stability in the FPA.
Right, and the thing, this is where we kind of get the beginning of some real insidious plots by the Phezzan. And maybe the kind of frustrating aspect for me is literally everybody in the FPA who is not in direct contact with Yang just a fucking shitty, incompetent asshole. Because essentially what Phezzan, tells Henslow is, I wouldn't really call you guys stable. I mean, how can you call yourself stable when you have somebody who's clearly angling to become a dictator. And of
Yeah.
course, Henslow's like, what do you mean, who? And then he's like, well, I'm talking about your national hero, Yang Wenli. And Henslow's like, oh, well, Yang, no, he saved the FPA. And he's like, or did he?
He didn't need to destroy the entire Artemis necklace.
Right, and it's like,
But he did.
Yeah, and it's laying the foundation of doubt within the FPA leadership about Yang that I think is going to have some like very like dark and unpleasant side effects from here on out. You know, this idea that like the FPA government may grow to increasingly fear Yang, and in the same way that Oberstein purposely assigned other admirals to Schaft's plan. My fear is that the FPA may eventually like pull Yang from vital battles because they don't want him to gain more influence.
Right.
Like, and it's of course that kind of fucked up thing where it's like, of course anybody who's ever met Yang is like, what? Right. Yang? No, of course not.
There's a version of the story where there's a version of the story where there's ambiguity if Yang actually does want to take power, but like we've seen Yang's character. We know there's no possible version of reality where Yang Wenli would ever do this.
Yes, like literally absolutely zero. Like it would never happen, but unfortunately the FPA apparently believe it might.
But you see how it could in another world.
Totally. So, I mean,
so that's the scheme, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's an effective scheme. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's an effective scheme. It's a scheme that hinges on both Phezzan correctly capitalizing on the FPA's insecurities, but it also capitalizes on the fact that the FPA is just kind of incompetent or continues to be kind of woefully bad at their jobs. I mean,
Indeed.
I don't know. Anyways,
yeah.
We kind of leave things on that kind of somber note because to celebrate Julian's promotion, we're having dinner at the Cazellnu household.
This is actually this. I feel like this is one of my favorite scenes in the entire show so far.
Yeah,
to be honest,
yeah,
because it's kind of just Yang and Cazellnu sniping at each other for 5 minutes, just talking shit at each other.
Yes, it's maybe one of my favorite conversations in this whole show. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just great. Where they meet and give Yang shit that he's still a bachelor, and Yang's like, well, plenty of bachelors have contributed to society. I didn't grow over 30 on purpose.
Right. Yes, there's just a lot of good back and forth between Cazellnu and Yang during
very humanizing Yang, I think.
Yeah,
and
it's
not that he wasn't already kind of relatable, but I found this scene especially relatable. I think it finally gave me a really closer handle on Yang as a character.
Yeah.
Specifically, there's a conversation he has with Cazellnu while they're playing super 3D chess or something.
Some fucking fourth dimensional chess or some shit.
Yeah, and Cazellnu basically tells him that he needs to take better care of himself because he's too lax with his personal safety for someone of his station, which we've seen, of course. He gave his sidearm to Bagdashu.
Yeah,
super shady Bagdashu.
And the thing is that, Cazellnu's not wrong. I mean, look how easily Kubersely got nearly assassinated.
Right.
And look at the reverberating effects of that. Who could say if had Kubersely stayed in power, if he could have, kept the FPA in one piece, but it probably would have helped if he hadn't been shot,
Indeed.
It's definitely it's a really fascinating conversation because essentially it's a debate between free will and the idea of the obligation of the responsibility and obligation of leadership.
Yeah.
This idea that
Go ahead.
Once you're a public figure, once you're a figure in leadership, in a place of leadership, once your life has a direct influence on the lives of others, is it your responsibility then to be, if not more selfish, but more like concerned about yourself as an actual entity?
Yeah. And just on a closer note to Yang, Cazellnu says, like, Cazellnu brings this up, and Yang kind of brushes it off as like, oh, well, if I paid that much close attention, I wouldn't be able to take my afternoon naps. But there's a thing Cazellnu says where he says, you like, Yang, you understand it, like, you understand the importance of this, but you just don't want to think about it.
Yes.
And I think that, like, that statement, I feel like, made a lot of things click for me for understanding Yang, because it's something I found very relatable with Yang, where he knows all of this responsibility he has to take, but also because he doesn't want to deal with it himself, and so that's part of why he, like, this is just the sense that I got personally, but like, he doesn't want to have to make these decisions, and so he keeps people around where he can ask what they think and then do what they say, if that makes sense. So it's like a couple episodes ago, even though, yeah, like, we know that Yang would have sent all those reinforcements, but he feels the need to call the round table or whatever, ask everyone their opinion, even if it parrots his own, and then just on a, like, a very personal level, because Merkatz, is giving him good advice to send everything out. He can say, yes, we'll do that, and we'll follow what he says. And this is something I feel like Yang has been doing almost the entire show so far, is like,
he a way
in such a way that almost absolves him of responsibility.
He spreads it out. He is. I mean, in every way. I think I'm really glad you came to this realization, Iro, because I think it also helped me kind of better understand Yang as a character. Like, beyond just like what we love him for,
he needs competent number twos, because he would not be able to function on his own.
Right. Like, in many ways, this is in both. Like, this is the depth of Yang's character. These are his weaknesses. These are the things that flesh him out. Is that Yang is truly thematically, in every way, Reinhard's opposite.
He's so passive.
Yes, and I think this episode, what I think the revelation you arrived at is he is he is Reinhard's opposite in every way, both good and bad. I think, like, I mean, okay, we're never gonna say Yang is like as bad as Reinhard. Yang's not fucking killing kids, but I think here's the thing, right? Like, we love Yang, and we say, oh, Yang, he's so competent, he's so great. But I think this conversation kind of helped me realize, oh, wait, there probably is a better version of Yang. Like the version of Yang we have in Legend of the Galactic Heroes is actually maybe more flawed and more compromised than we initially assumed.
I don't know if Yang, I don't know if he can make a choice on his own. Like, he needs to be pushed into those situations. Like,
he's reactive.
Yeah, he's reactive. That's exactly what
we can.
At the end of User Loan, when after it was captured, and Imperial fleet's coming in, and he gives them the warning of, if you keep coming, I'll shoot, basically. And like, he could have fired a warning shot himself or aimed for flank or something. And obviously, we think of Yang as he would never do that. He would never waste human lives intentionally. And while that's true, at the same time, like, he waited till the very last moment. And not necessarily in a good way.
Right.
He framed it in such a way. He entered the situation in such a way where it became the fault of the Imperial Admiral who kept going.
Yes.
And not his fault for firing,
I think it's a case of Yang doesn't like taking responsibility. He wants to push responsibility to others, Like
Yes.
he wants to push these kind of decisions to other people. He's the one who, it totally is a case of like Yang is the person who like, he hands you the gun and he's like, okay, are you gonna shoot me or not? And then it's only if and then if the person he just handed a gun to tries to shoot him, that's when he shoots back, because then he can say, well, he was about to shoot me, I had to, he left me no choice, I had to fight back. And I
Yeah.
don't think either of us are saying, oh, Yang is like has some pathological like weakness in his mind where like he's a coward, he's too afraid to pull the
No,
trigger. But I
it's
think
not
it's
that. But it.
but at its core,
Yeah.
Yang is the kind of person who he doesn't feel comfortable taking control of a situation.
Yeah.
In many ways, he likes reacting to the situation.
It removes responsibility from what he has to do.
Yes,
If you
because
just react, then you don't have to go and do things.
right, but the thing is that but obviously Yang isn't apathetic, right? Yang isn't doing nothing. It's just that when he finally does start doing things, when Yang does become active, when he becomes proactive, it's always proactive in reaction
Yeah.
to
And
the circumstances.
I'm just terrified that it'll be too late one time. Like,
And I think you're not wrong, because
or it'll be pushed into a situation that is
he
unavoidable
he
and what
will
could have been avoided if he was just a little more
yes,
proactive.
yes, he will keep letting himself get pushed until. And I think this is why I want to return to this conversation. He will keep getting pushed until there is no room left to be pushed.
Yes.
And that is because we return to Phezzan, where we once again talk with Rubinsky about what his actual plan is, what his true plan is for dealing with the FPA and the Empire. And his idea is that who is the one man in this entire galaxy who is Reinhard's equal, who could hope to put a stop to Reinhard? And that's none other than Yang Wenli. But not the Yang Wenli we have now. The Yang Wenli we have now doesn't have the power. He doesn't have the authority. Yang Wenli right now commands one fleet versus Reinhard, who commands an entire nation. The Yang Wenli we have now might not be able to stop Reinhard, but a Yang Wenli that, because of the continuously growing direness of the situation, a Yang Wenli who is forced to become the supreme leader and take control of the entire FPA. Now that is a Yang Wenli that might give Reinhard the good fight. And
Phezzan has created a situation where they've both set up the FPA brass to think the Yang Wenli is trying to take all their power, while simultaneously backing the Empire to an extent where the FPA can't get rid of Yang Wenli because he's the only person who could possibly stand up to the Empire's might.
Right. I mean, Rubinsky is purposely creating a situation. He's purposely trying to engineer Yang's autocratic rise to power.
Yeah.
Yes, like in many ways, like almost like Oberstein. I think Rubinsky is trying to play kingmaker. He's trying to put who he believes will be the best possible rulers for each nation. But whereas Oberstein is doing that purely for the gain of the Empire, Rubinsky is doing it to benefit Phezzan in the end. But it's there's that great line, right, about like how Yang is on a tightrope. And
he's on a thread.
He's on a thread, and I think
this episode's eponymous "One Narrow Thread."
Right, and then of course it is asked like, all right, what are you going to cut the thread? And I kind of love that Rubinsky says, no, we're not going to cut the thread. That would be foolish. We're gonna tighten it. We're gonna narrow it. We're gonna remove strand by strand, until Yang has nowhere left to go but either become the ruler the FPA needs,
or die.
His own self-destruction. And as you said, Iro, about what terrifies you about Yang's like intrinsic personality is which direction will Yang take? And frankly, neither of them are good.
Indeed. Yep.
But I kind of love it. I do love it in the sense of, like, bravo, Phezzan. I kept giving you shit for, oh, Phezzan gonna Phezzan.
Yep.
But you, upon revealing at least, a portion of your grand plan, I am truly impressed. I knew that you were going to play the FPA, the FPA and the Empire against each other. I did not think you would do it in such a fucking magnificent manner, and for better or worse, I truly cannot wait to see how this all develops.
Indeed.
And just as a brief note at the very end, we have Reinhard still being, fucking cold as hell. He says, I think Hilda is once again talking to Reinhard, and he's like, I think she's like, well, what happens if Kempf fails, right? Like, what if this whole plan fails? And then Reinhard's just like, and if he dies, then Kempf too is just that kind of man.
Yeah.
And it really says something that, like, I feel like we never really saw Reinhard use his other admirals that much, but at least the way he treated Kirkiais, it very much felt like, of course, Reinhard is a much colder admiral, a much colder tactician than Yang. Reinhard is definitely the dude who doesn't mind, taking losses to win the war, but he's not wasteful about it. Not usually.
Right. But this plan to move Geiersberg and send all these troops is kind of wasteful.
It's kind of wasteful, and it's kind of a gamble. And he's kind of treating the people involved as playing pieces, as tools, Yeah, and this part really emphasizes just how much Reinhard needed someone like Kirkiais.
Yeah, we get Hilda straight up thinking back to Kirkiais.
I mean, not just Hilda straight up thinking back to Kirkiais. They go all the way with his metaphor with fucking Hilda visiting Kirkiais' grave.
That's right.
And be like, oh, Kirkiais.
Only you could temper his severity and peril.
Yeah, it's... I wonder how many more times we're gonna...
What should those who are alive do in such a situation?
Yeah. I wonder how many more times... different people are gonna be visiting Kirkiais' grave and being, oh, Kirkiais, what would you do if you were here?
What would you do, Kirkiais?
Yes, what would Kirkiais do?
What would Kirkiais do? What would Siegfried Kirkiais do?
Yeah, get those t-shirts made.
WWKD.
Yeah, but, and so that episode kind of ends with a lot of pieces in play, and...
Yeah, we're setting up season 2.
This first 3 episodes, I think, do a fantastic job of setting up the new status quo. Like, the war has changed, these countries have changed. Some things have stayed the same, some things never change. For example, Job Trunich's still fucking hanging around.
Oh yeah,
we didn't even really talk about him much, but rest assured that slimy creep is still hanging around.
Slimy creep.
Yeah. You know what? It says something we didn't even mention. Yeah, we got another scene with him in his office looking at his 3 fucking portraits of himself.
Right. His fucking 3 portraits.
His 3 portraits.
What a dirtbag.
Yeah.
There's also the bit when Young's talking to Cazellnu, and Cazellnu's like, okay, now don't tell anyone, but I'm really suspicious about this Job Trunich guy.
Yeah.
And Young's just kind of like, oh, really? I see.
Yeah. As if I hadn't also been able to figure out that Job Trunich is literally the slimiest motherfucker in this entire show. Yeah.
Man.
But a great trio of episodes for setting up kind of where season 2's plot is going. I don't know if necessarily this plot line right now will be what all of season 2 is about, but or if it'll be kind of like a smaller arc in the same way Armlitzer or the Civil War were. But either way, I'm super interested in where things are going.
Yeah.
Heroes
is back.
Yeah, Legend of the Galactic Heroes is back. It's better than ever. Um, and I think with that, on that note, I think we're going to call this a podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's take care of some housekeeping. So, as always, you can listen to the podcast and read the rest of our lovely content on theglorioblog.com. You can follow us on Twitter at theglorioblog. You can check us out on YouTube if you just Google the Glorio blog YouTube. We still don't have a URL. We're just chugging along. But hey, y'all keep smashing that like and subscribe button, and maybe one day we can say you'll go to YouTube / the Glorio blog, or I don't know, maybe by that point the GLORIO Heroes branding will have eclipsed everything else, and
maybe
that'll have to be our actual URL. Who knows? What else? You can also listen to the podcast on iTunes and Podbean and wherever else podcasts
whatever else aggregates RSS feeds.
Yes, are made and stored. Let's see what else.
Watch The Legend of the Galactic Heroes on High Dive and VRV.
Yes, and VRV, indeed. You can also listen to our sister podcast, the GLORIO Chat. It airs every other week from us. If you want to listen to us talk about other anime, usually anime that aired in 2018, but not always.
Indeed.
And I think that's everything. So, once again, Iro, thank you for accompanying me.
Thank you.
To all of you listening to us, thank you. We're at the Big 10, number 10.
Yeah.
Episode 10, 1-0, the Big X.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's cool, man. We're in double digits now. It's a real milestone, and
this is a middle era of Fletch of the GLORIO Heroes.
Yeah, and I kind of said most of this during our big season finale podcast, but of course, thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it. Thank you for sticking with us for so long, and we hope you'll continue to walk this journey with us.
Don't always reply to the comments, but we do read them.
Yes, we always read the comments. We don't always reply just because, again, I love how much some of you guys have to say, and I wish I could respond in kind. Alas, we don't always have the time, to address every single point, but you guys often bring up some really interesting points. You guys often say you guys often bring up some stuff that, we miss either because, look, Legend of the Galactic Heroes is a big series, and Legend of the GLORIO Heroes is a short podcast, so we can't always reach everything, but rest assured we are always paying attention to what you guys are saying.
We say that, but our podcasts often run over the running time of the episodes of which they cover.
Yeah, I mean, I think they do that all the time. I cannot remember the last time we had a podcast that stopped around the 1 hour mark, but I suppose we got to get better at that. So, until then. Yes. Now we're even doing that. So, okay, one more time. Until then, I'll see you all next time amongst the sea of stars.